but what the hell? Let's score one for the bro. And there's something very ugly about that.
Okay, I'll give a brief answer on that. Thomas Jefferson said that there was no greater guarantor of our liberty than the jury system. And the reason I believe that he said that is because you are investing the ultimate authority. It is actually the final check in the system of checks and balances. Is you've got a legislature that enacts laws, an executive that enforces them, and a judicial system wherein individuals are charged with perhaps having broken that law. The final check in this system is to lay this all out before 12 randomly selected fellow citizens to make a decision as to whether or not justice is being served in this case. Now that means that they are empowered to judge the facts of the case. They are empowered to judge the law itself, whether or not this is a just law, or they are also empowered to decide, to judge whether this is a valid law, but to enforce it in this particular case would not serve the ends of justice. So you are putting that final power, that final decision, is put in the hands of 12 average, everyday people. Now, it is true that there is the opportunity for that to be abused, and it's not only O.J. Simpson, but back during the Southern Reconstruction era, you had juries returning not guilty verdicts in cases where people were obviously guilty.
You don't have to go back that far. The era of Goodman, Cheney, and Schwerner and the Civil Rights activists saw the routine acquittals of killers of civil rights workers.
Exactly so. Exactly so. So it is. There is no question. There is no better example of that classic symbol of the two-edged sword than the idea of jury nullification.
The idea is, as I understand it from you, Tim, the people are sovereign, not the judge,
right?
Not the court.
Exactly.
And you take that warts and all.
You have to take that warts and all. And in fact, it's interesting that in every step of the system of the criminal justice system, in every step, from the grand jury to the prosecutor to the judge to the cop on the beat, every step of the way, each of those people is empowered with the authority to make a value judgment, to make a decision. The grand jury may or may not return an indictment. They have that option. The cop may or may not exact an arrest in a situation. He may let you go, he may not. He has discretion. The prosecutor may or may not bring a charge. He has that discretion. The judge may or may not let the case go forward. He has that discretion. And yet, when we get to the final step, the jury, the actual citizens, suddenly they're told, you have no discretion. You know, you will enforce this law exactly the way I tell you. You are not empowered to have any discretion. That is a perversion of the system of justice.
Because the jury is the final,
should be
the only nonviolent.
They are sovereign. I ask people this question: what happened to the sovereignty that King George III had when the colonies overthrew the king? What happened to that great power the king had? The king was sovereign. He could have everybody's life. He owned all the property. Everybody was nothing. The king was everything. He was sovereign. What happened to his sovereignty? You know what happened to it? It's here. And every one of us, I'm sovereign, you're sovereign, and you are sovereign. His sovereignty is here. The jury is sovereign. People don't understand that. Why? I do not know.
Gentlemen, come back again.
Well, I think it's hard to feel like I'm sovereign when I see how our government is elected. We have no real control over the campaigns, the way people explain or avoid the issues and spin the issues and so forth. Incumbents are re-elected, what is it, 95% of the time?
Right.
Something of that sort. So I guess I'm cynical, but I don't think we have any control of what we get in government anymore.
One other point, the question of time frame. How many of us would have predicted that the Berlin Wall would have fallen so quickly, that communist regimes in Europe would have collapsed? We all knew it was going to happen sometime. because socialism just doesn't work. But nobody could predict when.
Well, the CIA did.
Do you accept the conservative argument that the Berlin Wall fell as much for any other reason as Reagan's advocacy of Star Wars and the tremendous build-up to counter Star Wars that would have had to be forced upon the Soviets? That in other words, it was the U.S. arms build-up, which is essentially antithetical to libertarian ideals. It's defensive and yet it's much more than the usual conception of defending merely our borders in space. Do you accept that argument? That Reagan forced their hand, they threw in the whole rotten apparatus, seeing they could not compete.
Not if you know the Germans.
That's the conservative argument, right?
My take on both of these things is that the leaders are only who's ever out in front of the charge. What was different in the Philippines before and after Marcos? It was just that people weren't going to take it anymore. And I think that's what happens what happened to a true fall. Maybe it was because they couldn't compete. I can't say, but I think it's just all of a sudden there's a mindset.
Well, they had a military industrial complex that they couldn't afford. And one of the reasons they couldn't afford it was the competition with initiatives like the one that Reagan had proposed, and they were terrified. So goes the argument.
They didn't tear down the wall, the people tore down the wall.
Absolutely true.
I mean, they could have given up the military race, and if they couldn't afford that part of it. Were they really fearful that we would attack them?
No, they couldn't afford it anymore. They had to dismantle something which had become no longer supportable based on their national output. Yes, sir, in the back.
Hi, Fred Collins, and Barbara said I have to
No, I
mind.
meant the fellow in the back.
I'm sorry.
And you'll be next.
Thought I was in the back.
I think what's been going on here is that government keeps assuming more and more power. I don't know if they take it or we're willingly giving it to them, but people are no longer responsible for their own health care. They're not responsible for their own retirement. They're not responsible for what they put in their bodies. They're not responsible for any of their actions.
Of course not.
And this is then reflected in the whole jury and trial system. Oh, well, you know, that person, their car blew up. They're not responsible for driving a car. Or better yet, they're not responsible for smoking cigarettes.
Yes, and
It's
see,
the tobacco industry's fault. And one of the things we have to do is change this attitude in people. And as we reduce the size of government, people will once again accept responsibility for themselves and expect others to accept responsibility.
well, how do you counter that when television news, for example, and our newspapers and every other organ of popular expression that comes from the media has this nightly drumbeat of the war on smoking and or comparable things, or the menace of the gun industry and how they deliberately secrete guns into the hands of notorious criminals for their greater glory and profit. I mean, this whole preposterous notion of our being without any free will in the matter is sold night after night, day in and day out by the American mass media. And lots of people buy it. And again, it plays into the hands of a certain lobby of trial lawyers who find it very, very useful, beneficial to advance their own aims.
And that's kind of along the lines of where I was going, because I wanted to answer one of your other questions, which was an underlying education of people. And you were talking about school reform before.
Right.
And I'm the webmaster for the Separation of School and State Alliance, based in Fresno. And I see Diane Barnes here, and she had her hand up earlier. And when it comes to the separation of school and state, I think I defer to her in addressing that issue.
Sure, let's hear from Diane.
Well, you will find a lot of different opinions about public education or education in general in libertarian circles. But essentially, my belief is that I have 3 children who are in public schools. I've had them in